if you have product market fit and are looking for sales-led growth, you should think about hiring a GTM. You can kind of mold this person into what you need them to be, especially as a founder. And I would give the GTME as much context as possible to your business, but to be able to differentiate yourself in the market and win against your competitors and grow faster, the GTME can really help you do that.
Ketan, cheers.
Cheers, man.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Great to have you. Would love to start with your journey into the role that you have now. You work adjacent with PMs and you have for a lot of your career. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit.
Just to kind of give you a quick overview of my career, I went to school because I wanted to learn more so on the engineering side, work hands-on with products. And back then it was so much about hardware technology that I was interested in. But thankfully I ran into someone who founded his own company at YC startup. He's like, dude, B2B SaaS is the way to go. So
It definitely was.
yeah. So, I took a little bit of a career pivot and applied for a medical device startup. I work in sales. So that's kind of how I kicked off my career in sales and partnerships. Throughout that, then moved into ops. And my most recent role is actually a GTM engineer. So one thing that I really loved and has been consistent through my career is I basically worked at early stage startups. Because there's so much opportunity for you to dip your hands in multiple different areas. That's something that always excited me. I was doing a lot of sales, but at the same time, implementing a lot of systems that helped our teams, our internal product teams, manage deliveries and timelines and processes to help us build systems that helped us scale. And that's kind of been pretty standard across all my career. I almost feel like 20% of every job that I've had, I really wanted to focus on building internal tools and systems that made my life better and I could perform better by implementing those systems in place. And so when I think about GTM engineering, it's so much so that doing it full time and then supporting other sales teams, because I've lived that life before, but now I'm solely focused on, internal systems that are helping these sales teams kind of scale and giving them all the tools that they would need to support their sales-led growth cycles.
So being an engineer by background, even earlier on in your career when you were in sales and partnerships more formally as a role, did you think that you were basically doing what is now called GTM engineering?
I very much think so. I'm sure people have heard of Clay at this point. They're the ones that kind of coined and popularized the term GTM engineering. But it was very much that. I think there was no term for it. In some ways, the role itself was pretty nebulous and can be sort of like early days PMing. It's like, what does a PM even do?
Right.
It's a very similar idea question, like what does a GTM engineer do? But it can depend in the context of each company and their stage of growth. But at the same time, it is very much in supporting these internal systems. And now with the advent of AI, you just have so much opportunity and ability to build something and test it, and then actually formalize it, which is where I think deep engineering and PM expertise comes into play.
So did you work with engineers, like software engineers and product managers as part of that job responsibility, or was it still just in the realms of the sales world?
Earlier on, it was more so in the realm of sales world. I worked at a payment processor not too long ago, and that's where I worked more so closely with PMs and engineers to kind of, I remember mocking up in Figma, like a UX experience for someone purchasing using Snap on GoPuff's app. So, I worked not only with our PM internally on the payment side, but also GoPuff's PM.
Maybe talk about that experience a little more, because I think that'll speak to your builder experience, kind of you being an informal PM and being a GTM engineer all in the same breath.
Yeah, informal PM is like going maybe a little too far.
You work in Figma, so you're already doing that.
Credit, but I have always been a tinkerer. I like just playing around and learning new technologies and tools. So Figma came as that, and it was really, at the time, again, joined Forage as a very early employee. And we had to kind of start leveling up as it came to moving away from like these direct to consumer, sort of small SMB mom and pop shops, to getting deals like GoPuff, like Uber Eats, 7-Eleven, etc. The first formal experience I had was like we had to design kind of like an API integration with GoPuff to be able to launch that, because we were moving away from these like white label. When you think about checkout experience, it's like you want to optimize it for the customer, and having as less touch points as possible to make it as good of an experience for them. So what could we think about during checkout experience for GoPuff that helped improve the conversion rate as much as possible? One of the first things we kind of kicked off with was like a project brief, or a document that I worked with the GoPuff in, to really set the stage for what it looks like from a compliance standpoint. And kind of this thing with compliance where you have to create this business requirements document for the USDA, for them to approve how your product, or sorry, payment processor would integrate with us.
And did you have a PM on your side join that as well, or were you the one leading that effort from your company?
I was leading that effort initially. The PM that came in from our side eventually ended up being on more so like banking and reconciliation, the actual payments.
Okay.
I was focused and supporting more so the PM on the user experience and like actual checkout flow.
You're basically PM.
Yeah. And yeah, so like to like we were the ones that understood the like FNS portion of what it takes to actually integrate as a payment processor, and leaning on GoPuff for like, tell us how you run your checkout experiences, right? How can we collaborate and bring the two together? So here's a list of like requirements, supporting them on like features that they would need to implement within the PRD. But really, I think my biggest contribution to that was the creation of this like Figma checkout flow, and then working with their design team to say, can you add this line item here, and like how can we optimize it for the Snap customer, because that's what we understood really well.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many similarities with what you did with what a PM does. And so as much as we don't want to admit that it's product adjacent, it very much is. You worked to understand what other companies are doing in the industry. It's kind of industry analysis. You knew what the customer wanted. You worked with design and somewhat engineering to actually figure out what to do. And you drove the process along with it. Like that's literally everything at this point. Yeah. And you probably were involved in the launch, I assume.
Yeah. So that's the second piece of it. Once everything was built, we had to pass through certain phases of testing with the FNS. So as a payment processor within a certain state, and then also nationwide. But there were certain checkpoints where you had to sometimes bring in a third stakeholder that was state specific, but you went through rigorous testing within the app. So, based on this compliance standards, FNS had requirements on this is how, when you do perform a refund, the money must go back to the card. You can't be over refunded. And so we would coordinate with GoPuff's own engineers and also our engineers internally to set up like testing and QA. And so basically, once we're implementing these, we would set up like testing days for us to kind of go through all, there were about like 35, 36 tests that we had to like pass. And typically what used to happen is it would be that you test internally and then you test it with the government team, and then they would either pass fail you, but we got it to a point where we were passing every single time. So that was like our value proposition to our partners. It's like, we're shortening the entire time frame for your launch. And then once launch happened, I moved a little bit into like more marketing and what does it look like to activate customers, and like how is this performing across your basket size? Is it increasing your average order volume? And starting to get closer on metrics there and trying to optimize for that. But to a degree, we understood that so well that we just implemented it from the get-go.
So if you were Now, fast forwarding a couple years into a GTM engineering role, do you think that the responsibilities that you would have had in that journey to launch that would have been similar, or do you think you would have leaned into something different?
I definitely think that it was very similar. It was the title's operations manager, but it was very fluid in what it meant. I mentioned a little bit earlier, our responsibility was just to get our partners live. Yeah. Once sales signs deals, it basically gets handed off to us, and we're seeing it all the way to launch and then forward. When I think about GTM engineering, it is very much so thinking about the company, its launch in the context of the market that it's in, and whatever you can do to make that happen. And I think there's parallels between the roles in terms of GTM engineering can be very ops focused, but it can also be very sales focused. And ops managers would do really well in a role like this because there's so much opportunity for you to support those tools and processes internally.
We've been talking a lot about the term, so it might help to maybe describe it in kind of how we got here. So from your perspective, how did the term GTM come about? Obviously, you mentioned Clay kind of popularized it, but what do you think it means today? And how do you think it will change over time?
So GTME can mean a lot of things. I think there's two schools of thought personally. One is like sales support, which is more, it's funny. The parallel I would make to PMing is like instead of an MVP, there's an MVP, which is like minimum viable experiment.
I see. Okay.
So
that may become a term in yeah soon. So you heard it here first.
I mean, yeah, it's so much that, right? Like now we're powered with tools like AI, like Vercel or Replit, and Lovable to at least get something out there to test it out. And when you think about user research, I think about like market research. And so me running this experiment gives me the data and like, how do I need to iterate on that experiment going forward?
And is an experiment a product experiment? Is it a research experiment? How do you define that?
I would say it's more of a sales experiment, like campaign copy.
I see. Okay.
I'm testing this campaign within the subcategory of or sub industry. How's it performing here? What are elements that we can take from this campaign copy, apply to a different campaign? Yeah. And also when it comes to like deliverability and email, you want to manage what, like when email domains get burnt, like how do you make sure you're keeping that in mind, and adjusting your campaign copy to make sure that you don't run into issues with email deliverability, and essentially like, managing it on the back end as well.
So is it fair to say that the better GTM engineers you have, the more efficient they'll help make the sales teams, and thus the more those sales teams can focus on selling and make money for the business? Is that essentially how it all comes together for business impact?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you don't need a huge team of GTMs. I mean, it depends on the scale of the company. But right now, I'm one person working across a lot of my clients to support sales teams of like 5 to 7, and specifically working closely with one sales leader. But we're doing things like campaign copy and running outbound experiments to just book meetings. Like that's the metric that really matters to salespeople. The second thing I would say is like that we're trying to sell more is time saving. It's a little bit harder of a sell, but when the salesperson has to, after a meeting, come back and think about all the stuff that they did put in their CRM.
Yeah, you're reducing that load intensity.
Exactly. So there's a time and a cost saving there, which is also supporting the sales teams essentially to just focus on what their purview is, which is I just need to book meetings and sell deals.
I think this is great because historically, maybe companies would try to place a PM in the mix here to try and solve this problem.
Interesting.
But it's rare. And even if they did that, PMs would not have the experience or context to build empathy with those sales RevOps teams to know how to help them be more successful. And I think if you're bringing in someone from the other direction, you're putting them essentially in a role that allows them to understand context better while empowering them to actually build the system in place. Because I feel like when I work with sales teams, a lot of the complaints are around the tooling sucks. And so this is great because when you frame it as unlocking time savings and cost savings, that's ultimately just healthy for the business.
Yeah.
And hopefully helping people in the GTM world be able to enjoy and operate their jobs more effectively.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny that you mentioned you're thinking about the end user and customer. I do that the same way, but thinking about the internal sales teams.
Right.
Yeah. How can I optimize your experience selling and like have data integrity across all different pieces of the workflow, or the records that I've been putting into my CRM have to be the same that I'm putting into Slack, versus any other conversations, and making sure that all of those data, all that data is being transmitted thoroughly from end to end.
I'm curious on how you stay fresh and learn about this space, given it's so new.
Yeah.
You've mentioned already a few different new terms. And so are you just learning those from experience? Are there particular books or videos or places you go to learn about this space? Because I feel like there's still a huge opportunity there to educate people on what this world looks like today and where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a little too early for books, but thought leadership comes in. I'm learning a lot from communities
Okay.
that I've been in. I'm in the Clay Slack community. I think there's a lot of great folks out there. And Clay also themselves puts out a lot of thought leadership from this piece.
Okay.
But when I think about campaign copy, for example, legendary guy Eric Oslowski, he gets like 5 million emails a month, which is ridiculous. And he's probably the best person to do or teach what good campaign copy looks like. And he did a series of YouTube channels. I was lucky enough to follow Clay's journey Clay's journey early enough, where they have supporting partners in the form of Clay agencies, and so each one of them kind of focuses on like, different criteria. You can have like outbound campaigns, and that agency will only focus on that, or more RevOps functions such as CRM enrichment, that they're working with really really large deals, and making sure that the data and signal intelligence from all their entire prospecting, um, or the prospect list is like always up to date, and their reps can pull the right signals and data to kind of help that grow. So it's more so just talking with those people, and then the second thing that really also helps is iterating on the stuff that you just put out there. I run my own campaign copy, and I know what works and what doesn't. But it's also, you are technically always going to start fresh with any new client or customer that you're working with. Um, you know, I think context is such a huge piece. We spoke about context earlier. When I'm working with a new customer, the first few discovery calls are always, how much can you tell me about your business? A couple of the basic questions are more so focused around like who their current customers, if they're relatively established and just need help, like kind of better processes and kind of continue to grow, and they're like running out of options. So it's like, what worked with their previous customers? How can we replicate that and try out within new spaces?
I guess I want to understand also when the right time is to hire a GTME from your perspective. And alongside that, what traits are most important in looking for a strong GTME?
Yeah. In terms of hiring a GTMA, I think if you've built out a small sales team early on, you can really unlock the potential of what's possible. Um, because it like helps you 5x or 10x what one salesperson could do. And that's more so on like manual research that reps go through and do. I would say if you have product market fit, and are looking for sales led growth, like that's you should think about hiring a GTME. You can kind of mold this person into what you need them to be, especially as a founder. Um, but it's and I would give the GTME as much context as possible to your business. And like early teams can really succeed well. I'm a little bit biased because I'm like have been and seen early teams. Um, but to be able to differentiate yourself in the market and win against your competitors and grow faster, the GTME can really help you do that.
That's so similar to how I would recommend hiring the first PM. In the product world, once you already have some traction towards product market fit, and you need someone to come in and think about how to help those engineers build the right thing at the right time, at the right scale, that's when you need a PM.
Yeah.
Same thing
Yeah.
on the sales side. So I like kind of the distinction of you bring in a PM as you're getting product market fit, you bring in a GTME as you're trying to get sales market fit or sales led growth, right?
Yeah.
Versus product led growth. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. I think and anytime you're ready to kind of rocket ship it. And the earlier on you can bring them, the better.
Would you ever bring in a GTME before you have a sales team?
I think if you're looking for early customers, you could. I mean, to be honest, I look at it from the lens of me starting my own business and being a founder for like my consultancy.
Yeah.
And it's very much I'm doing GTME work for myself while I'm looking to sell.
Right.
But I'm using the tools like the GTME tools to be able to sell more effectively as well. So I think personally, I might be biased, but I don't think you can bring them early enough.
Interesting. I think for product, I would not hire a PM before I have engineers, for example. You just don't need it. Like the CEO or the founders should be the PMs. The engineers, you can work with them. Ideally, some of the founders are engineers as well. They're building. And then when you need to really kind of have a more effective product development process, that's when I think you need to bring in a PM. So that's, at least there's some distinction there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what would you say is the most likely role that people come from when they transition into GTME? And also, what traits are important there?
Yeah. The most adjacent role that I've seen is like RevOps, which is funny because it's more like it's later stage of the type of
Yeah. But
But-
they're there, like RevOps is there to help the sales team be more successful.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, essentially. I think that being said, this is a hot topic and debated topic.
I'm
but
sure, yeah.
I definitely think that as long as you are a generalist and have enough context on sales and know how business can grow, I think you can be a efficient GTME. I will say, I think in terms of skills, you need to be able to understand code to a degree, or like when you're shipping like small iterative products, like a dashboard for a salesperson to manage, like their inbox. That's like something that you can build with small no code or low code tools, but being able to get it to a point where it's actually functional in the real world, I think we do need a little bit of that like engineering or technical expertise. Not that can't be learned. And I don't think you need to go super far, but like CS50, understand how JSON works. And in terms of like traits, I would just say like curiosity and being fast enough in terms of actually shipping stuff. I see a lot of people who are good talkers, but I've seen them not like necessarily ship out as much stuff. And I think, to be honest, if you're curious, you kind of just want to test new things out, and you won't know that you're working off of the best sort of information until you do that.
What do you think the missing component ends up being for folks that are better at talking and not able to actually get in there and ship?
I think people overthink.
Mm.
I was in this boat, by the way. Very early on when I was learning clay, I was just like, so many things you can do with this. And I was trying to be really thorough with thinking through the best approach and always the most optimal approach rather than just like getting to that MBE, like I mentioned. You want to, we think that we know more than we actually do. And it's not until you hear from the outside world what you need to change to get that message better. I think someone who's done it's 5 days of thinking and shipped up like an outbound campaign versus someone who's tested like an outbound campaign 5 times on the fifth day, the second person's going to win every time. Yeah. Just because they've seen what the actual world says. And I might have all the context, foundational knowledge, etc. But the second person is telling you what you want to hear, or sorry, telling you what works in the real world rather than what you want to hear.
Right. Yeah, it's similar in product as well. I think the more you can kind of get, Facebook used to be infamous for move fast and break things. They're not anymore. And I think breaking things isn't necessarily the best approach, but it's the iterative mindset that I think is important.
There's a fine balance, right? You can't break things that by the way, I see a lot of people also do the second approach of sending out a lot of bad campaign copy.
Yeah.
There's a fine balance between what's the best point for us to share or like send this out.
It's like that's how you probably go into defining your MBE.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we've talked a little bit throughout the podcast so far about your own consultancy. So maybe let's dive deeper into that and talk about how you got into that in the first place. What is it like being a founder?
Yeah. Incredibly empowering, I should say. There's a level of freedom that I felt I always wanted. I told it early on, I talked to that YC founder and started some company. That's the feeling that I wanted to feel. And, back then I was young and naive and like, yeah, you're gonna have a B2B SaaS startup one day.
Yeah.
No. But in some ways, this just definitely is very freeing. How it got started, there's throughout my career, I was always tinkering. And even at my previous job, I was trying to build some systems, sort of in a similar fashion. That's what I got introduced to Clay and ended up learning it relatively quickly. And then connecting with a lot of other Clay agency founders. I think I spoke about this a little bit as well. And just seeing how they were able to kind of, take it into their own hands and make something out of it.
How did you get into learning about Clay? Was it because you were using it in your job at the time, or you spent a lot of time outside of that just tinkering around with it?
I was looking for new tools, and it happened that funnily enough, I knew about Clay, trying to play around with it. It didn't really stick initially. I actually revisited it because I realized when I did one of their university courses what the possibilities actually are. I think with Clay, you can run into this like blank canvas problem. I don't know what I can do with it. So that's the point.
Is it because it's maybe a little bit overwhelming with how much you can do?
Yeah. Okay. It's exactly that. And then once I actually found a use case for it, which was at my previous job, I was trying to just create like meeting notes. And it's not even what Clay would be used for typically, but I thought I saw myself be able to do that through a Clay table. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible. And then I started, talking to more Clay agency founders that were running outbound systems. And when that happened, I saw for myself the potential it can have. And there's this advent of AI, and I personally felt like I was getting left behind. I was like, there's some tool I just want to learn. And Clay is actually relatively easy to learn. I think people get overwhelmed by it, but it's actually like a glorified Excel. They can manipulate data, bring in, and export it to other sources of information. So when I reframed and thought in my own head that Clay is just like the middle orchestration layer for any input or output. So um, it's really good for data warehousing or even transforming that data and exporting into a data warehouse if you were to do so. But essentially, that's when I was exploring new tools, I got really fascinated by it and then started playing around with other creative ideas of how I could use it. I use it for personal like website branding and photography booking. So I like to take photos on the side, and um, funnily enough, I was like sent an outbound sequence out to a bunch of wedding events or wedding spaces,
Mhm.
just to say, hey, I'm a photographer. Here's my website. In case you're ever looking for like a back photographer, feel free to reach out to me. And so, I got some positive replies in sense of, oh yeah, we'll keep you in mind kind of thing.
Mhm.
But that was just scratching the surface of what was possible.
Was there an aha moment for you where you realized the true power of Clay?
Funnily enough, it wasn't an outcome limit for me specifically, but when I saw other people, like some of the early claim agencies were raking in a decent amount of money. And I was kind of like, I was looking for external sources of income, and I, figured might as well try to do something. And then once I actually ended up leaving that job, I found out that let me just give it a shot. Um, and when I landed my first customer, I was like, okay, this is possible. And I almost switched from I know I can do this to let me just focus on what that deliverability looks like, um, and help really early stage founders grow their business. And in my early days, I was targeting founders that were super early. So, it was relatively like I wasn't looking for any money at the time. It was just like, what can I do for you to help me upskill myself and actually prove to myself that Clay is something that is viable as a tool um, to be able to help create or help you grow your business. So bringing in my sales experience from, what is it that makes copywriting work? How are salespeople currently selling into complex deals or even as founders, like whether they're connecting on LinkedIn, essentially like mapping out what that process look like for them and then just automating that using Clay and other tools.
What was the journey like for you towards that first client that you mentioned that you signed?
Yeah, it was not super easy, but uh, it was such a new thing that you kind of just need someone to take a chance at you. And thankfully, I had a relatively close knit group of founder friends um, from things in the past that, like I worked at Techstars, which is a early stage VC
Mhm.
accelerator. So I reached out to some of my network and just said, hey, I do this now.
And how did you show that you did it? Like, did you have a website? Did you have some proof?
Oh, just conversations. I
You
just
really? Okay.
I
Nice.
hopped on a call with them. I showed them things like, oh, I did this for my photography business. Although I kind of moved away from that because I'm like, if you're doing this for your photography business,
Yeah.
how are you going to do it for me?
Right.
Instead, I switched it to like before a discovery call, I do heavy research on their company.
Okay.
Found new ways to like, what's the wow factor?
I see.
It's like I know your business so well that I know this is what the pain point we can target your specific sub industry using this message. And just showing up very prepared to that initial discovery call, I think helped me land an actual customer and just saying, because I think for them, they understood what is possible and you show them what they haven't seen yet.
Hmm.
And I never talked about play. I never talk about how I'm doing this.
Okay.
It's just like the end result of what it's bringing to them. And then I will just manage what that process looks like. So it's really selling the idea.
And then what is your pitch to these companies initially when you before you even get on that introductory call?
Yeah, I told him I was focusing on outbound messaging and helping them automate some of their sales copy and sales efforts. So in general, I can take into account what your business does and find out who your customers are and create personalized, hyper personalized campaign copy to help at least book initial meetings.
And then how do you position yourself as being different than the imagined hundreds of other types of companies out there that try to do this, especially since you're not really mentioning the fact that you're using Clay or any type of latest tools to help you be successful?
Yeah. I think showing up and being reliable is something that I underestimated.
Okay.
But only because there's so many people that weren't doing it well.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
that's baseline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in addition to that, it's showing up to that first meeting with a discovery call where like I have campaign copy ready before we talk about their business and I even understand it. Of course, you're always gonna have questions, but it's almost like doing like reverse demos. Like you tell me what you want me to build, I'll do it in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And but I would go a step further as to I know your business and using these, tools to heavily research what the company does, who is their potential ICP that they talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and building campaign copy for them that will really speak to why this message will work.
Mhm.
And initial days, that was much, much harder because I had, uh, those results to show for it. It's really the idea that I'm selling, but you kind of de-risk it by saying, this is of no cost to you. I just need your time
Mhm.
and give me like 3 Ps.
Mhm.
And I would have by that point, a very good foundation of why something like this is useful for you.
And who are you pitching to?
Typically the CEO and founder. The earliest I did was founder and the co-founder.
Okay.
And I would not put back to that. That's a little too early.
Yeah.
You need to, as long as I know that they have at least a couple of paying customers,
Mhm.
and just want to go from there. And then when I was thinking about who I should target, it wasn't just like everyone in my founder network.
Yeah.
It's like who I really think could use something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, because that in itself is hard to know, but I guess the more you enrich your CRM, the more you can figure that. What would you say you learned the most from being a founder so far?
It's incredibly rewarding, but it can also be very, very tough, and taxing. And I think if you're in a place where you're ready and have like the flexibility to take that step, I would 100% go for it again. I think if you're looking for like stability or like it's just not gonna work. And I think you're not going to be able to be successful if you're caring about outcomes in terms of like monetary value and stuff versus just like actual deliverability and like curiosity based approach of actually learning something new.
Wouldn't it make sense for everyone to then try and do this if this is definitely a place where the founders want to bring on consultancies for GTME support?
I'm a huge proponent for people wanting to do this. They should do this. They should try this 100%. I would say try to do it on the side before you actually jump into it full on. Start with one customer. Like that's what
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent for people. They should go out and do this. Now is the time because you have tools that exist that help you do this. Like I leverage AI so much. It's literally like a second brain and someone that's so dystopian to say something that helps me. Uh, I guess 5x my own output.
All right. And now, what advice would you go back and give your younger self?
Just take her. Like, don't be too afraid of jumping into it. Have some faith in yourself. If you're feeling an inkling of wanting to try something, I say just go out and do it, and be curious and like iterate quickly. Like, just it's funny in like when I was approaching sales conversations, you asked, and I think you were a little taken aback by like me saying and setting up the expectation that like if this is not a paid engagement, let's not talk about this.
Mhm.
But for me, in any approach that I take, whether it's like a job interview or like trying to get a sales deal, I'll try to get to know as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Because I think that'll help redirect you as um, as much to be able to, adjust your approach going forward. And it can come off a little bit like I don't know, cross, but I think it works for me.
It's scary too, right? Because sometimes you don't want to hear the no.
Yeah, but if you embrace that no, then it's so much easier to have a stomach going forward because you're gonna hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll end it there.
Oh, that
Thanks, Ketan.
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.